coffee spilled. Okay, welcome everyone. It is February 27th, 2024 to our 9 o'clock board briefing meeting. Let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present. Commissioner French is on Zoom. And we are starting with Mr. Burgess. So Mike, we'll let you take it away and give us an update on the legislature.
Thank you, Commissioner. Hope you're all doing well. Getting down to the end here. We are going to be done on next Thursday. But for all intents and purposes, things really kind of come together a few days before the day before. It always takes them about 24 hours-ish, 36 hours to kind of finish everything off. And once they've come to an agreement, it takes time to pass bills back and forth and those types of things. So I would imagine that we just got done with the last committee cutoff. So yesterday was the fiscal committee cutoff. So we're pretty much done in committee now the remainder of session. There will likely be a few bills that are passed that require the appropriations committee or the ways and means committee to meet, pass bills that are part of like budget negotiations or something like that. So that'll happen, but pretty much from here on out, we're going to be out on the floor. But for something that's interesting is my next note there, the initiatives. I'm sure you all have read about the 6 initiatives and have likely read that the House and Senate are going to take up 3 of them, or at least have hearings on 3. The 3 being the one that deals with kind of nicknamed the parental rights one, the one that deals with police pursuit, and the one that deals with stopping local governments from imposing an income tax. Those are getting their hearings later this week or early next. And then from there, the House and Senate would, if they want to do it, they would have to pass them. That leaves the 3, what I'd call more the fiscal initiatives, which still go to the ballot if this form holds. Haven't heard much reasoning why they're choosing these 3 over others. You could probably draw your own conclusions, but it's very, this has kind of been the most, the largest issue that's kind of dominated session. I think I've talked about this earlier with those initiatives, the ones that cost money and their impact on the budget or the potential impact on the budget if they were adopted. And then these other 3 that are more on the policy side. So that's kind of been hanging over session, and finally looks like they're going to get some, get their public hearings and, and we'll see where that ends up. And then all the while, they will be out on the floor passing bills as we get to the to adjournment on March 7th. More than likely, I think they'll have the budgets probably negotiated over the weekend. Word is the Senate's not going to work this weekend, but that could change. That's usually an indication that they are going to have negotiators working through that weekend and come up with a deal on the budget. The budget's about $354 million apart. Not a huge number. We talked about that a little last week. But not a big number that is insurmountable. One thing we did not talk about last week was on the transportation budget side. I'm still going through the details of it, but I did want to note that there was some concern that with the increased costs of like the fish passage barriers and then just the other issues with mega projects costing more money, some concern about north-south corridor getting having funds removed or pushed out in the future. That did not happen. The project retained its funding, so that's the good news there for the big one in your area. Because like I said, again, we did not talk about that last week. If you have any questions about those things I've talked about, if you don't, then I'll just go right down to the bill list, if that's okay. Or do you have any questions beyond or about some of those first things I talked about?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. I'll go. So these, again, nothing new here. These are all bills that we've talked about, just updates on where they are. But for 1899, that is the wildfire reconstruction bill. It did come out of the Appropriations Committee yesterday, but there was an amendment that hung in response to testimony this weekend that was given by the Department of Commerce. And it removes sections 3, 4, and 5 of the bill. Those are the sections, Ron, if you can switch it to the bill. If I gave you that link in time, sorry. Just so you can see, commissioners, which ones were removed. There's concern by the Department of Commerce and probably ultimately the administration. Ron, it's in that second email I sent you just to make sure it was the right. You scroll up a little so I can, yeah, that's the right version. And if you scroll down to sections 3, start with 3 and then 4, they're not on this. I don't think 3 and 4 are on the same page, so you're going to have to kind of scroll so the folks can read it. But anyway, Commerce came in and testified against these provisions because of their concern about granting exemptions to the energy code. This and the building codes. This is not a new topic that we've talked about in terms of some folks' displeasure with the building code and going away from fossil fuel energy sources. This all fits with that. And it was the committee's decision last night to remove these sections. So now the bill is, for all intents, is more of a grant program. The exemptions to the building code are not in the bill right now. I have not talked to Representative Voles yet about this. I mean, it is his bill. And so I will go talk with him and see if there isn't a way to, keep these sections together somehow. Section 5 is pretty minor. It's just a reference to the other part of the law. I think it's but 3 and 4 are the meat of what was removed. So I'll talk to
Mike, just a second. Commissioner French just raised his hand.
Sure.
Well, and had the opportunity to spend some time with regard to the amendment that Commerce has introduced, and I guess I'm not surprised, disappointed, but not surprised. And so I have talked to 2 of the potential plaintiffs because from what I understand, and of course things are dynamic, but at this point, they are poised so that come March 15th, if the state hasn't done anything to either change the code or extend the time period further, that the other industry leaders are prepared to go ahead and file litigation and also seek a restraining order for implementing the code. But as I commented last week, I would really like to see the county do what it can to assist people in the affected areas with regard to getting building permits, or at least getting vested in the current code. I know that when we were dealing with the Hearst decision, we went out of our way to try and help people impacted by that decision. And from my standpoint, this is equal to or greater than the impacts of the Hearst decision. And so I'd just like to put that out there for the consideration of the board. We're down to a little over 2 weeks in terms of being able to do something to help these folks. And if we are going to do something, there's going to have to be advertising, and there's going to have to be some adjustments for the building department so that they can accept and administer these permits. So I just put that out there for the board's consideration. Otherwise, we're the last hope for some of these people, and if we don't do something, there is no hope. So thank you.
So, commissioners, I'll keep working the process here to get the bill back as close to its original form. But given the realities of the situation, I don't know how successful that's going to be, but just assure you that I'll be working on that over the next handful of days, because the bill's got to pass off the floor in the Senate looks like by Friday is the next cutoff. So it'll happen relatively fast before we talk next week. The remainder of the bills on the list, I don't know that we really need to run through them all. They're all moving. I've pared the list down to what you have here is only those that are moving. So if you had questions about one that is not on the list, it's because it is no longer, it's dead for session. Interestingly, there was the public defense bill was added to the appropriations agenda yesterday, was heard and passed in the same day. That's not super rare, but it doesn't happen all the time. But there was an article in the Seattle Times, a big article about public defense. Some of you might have seen. Commissioner Jordan, I had sent that to you. You'd had an interest in that topic. We'd talked about it, so thought you'd would be interested in the article. And I know Wasack sent it out. I just wish the article would have been sent or written a month ago because it was very timely. It was a really good article about the problem. So just wanted to flag that one for you, that it's still moving too. But other than that, commissioners, I don't have a lot new. Things are just funneling down. There's less and less things on the table, but for the budget. But kind of hurry up and wait, and let's see what the legislature does over the next 10 days.
Question.
Commissioner Jordan, sorry.
Are we, Mike, at this time? Are we should have a little button.
I
or
know.
something we press.
I need everybody to raise their hand.
In terms of like the reconciling the differences between the House and Senate budgets, are we really just waiting for the outcome of that, or do we have tea leaves in terms of what might move or drop off or change there?
It's a good question, Commissioner. I haven't had discussions with budget folks or folks in that realm because they were in Appropriations Committee all day yesterday and had been for pretty much all day Saturday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So hadn't been timely. Even the budget writers themselves weren't doing much budget work. They were working on all the policy bills that cost money in their committees. So good question. That's something more I'll focus on this week. But it would not have been timely. Ron, you asked about the patent crime bill. It dropped off. It did not make it out of committee. But Commissioner Jordan, does that answer your question? It was an answer, non-answer. So
Yes. Thank you.
but I'll dig into it more this week for sure. I mean, and for us too, for you all, there's a lot. You'll remember that the the Senate seemed to put a lot more into the wildfire direct dollars, regardless of the bill we just spoke about. So that's something we'll want to make sure that is carried forward.
Great. Any other questions for Mike? I'm not seeing any. Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Appreciate it. It's got to feel good that that's kind of winding down.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, believe me, I'm looking forward to being done, but 10 more days, but I'm not counting. So,
Exactly.
all right. See you all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, that's going to then take us to Matt Faircar. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning. Just have 3 traffic code revisions for you this morning. Ron's got the slide up. The first one, next slide please, is for Fruitvale Road. And this is kind of an unusual intersection. The southbound leg is actually a private road that has a stop sign already. But then the 2 local access roads of Richland and Fruitvale are not currently stop controlled. We wouldn't normally stop control an intersection like this, but we've had a few close calls reported to us, and none of those roads go anywhere. It's a 90-degree turn. People tend to funnel out to Hayford and north up to January, so it would just be a safer situation. So we're recommending an always stop on that one. Any questions on it? Okay. Next one. The next one is Yale Road. I have them in the right order.
We've spotted
I don't
that.
have yet.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll go to spotting next.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just a little background on it. Next slide. Thanks, Ron. This is out on the West Plains. It's for the Aspen Park neighborhood. That's their entrance. You can see with those two red lines kind of at the top of the aerial there. And it's a new subdivision. You can't see it on this, obviously, because the aerial's older than the subdivision, but they got some new apartments they put in along Hayford, and then also a subdivision to the west back in behind there. And the concern is they did some widening as we require typically on subdivisions, but it's not enough to comfortably park, and they're against a 45-mile-an-hour road. So it's not safe. So we're gonna put up some no parking signs. Also along the entrance, there's a median, and it's another spot we really don't want people parking. There's not enough room to safely park. So just putting in no parking signs where you can see the red lines there. Any questions? Yeah. Next one's Yale. And this similarly is another spot we would like no parking. This is up north. You can see on the vicinity map on the left. And that's actually the highway right next to it there, Highway 2. But there's just a bad angle on this one. There's a business there just to the east of where that red line is. And their employees are parking out on the road, which is normally fine, but it's creating bad sight distance for the folks coming in, trying to stop there on Colbert. And they can't see around that corner far enough to safely get up onto the roadway. So just proposing no parking that one little stretch. We talked to the owner, he was fine with it, there was no issue. He realized it was a little bit of a concern and didn't seem unhappy with the idea we'd posted no parking. I think he has enough room on site for his folks to park anyway. And that's it. Happy to answer any questions. All right, thank you.
Pretty straightforward, thank you.
Stick around to hear Ben's talk. Okay.
Well, you're just speeding up our time this morning.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Ben, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners. Ben Bradable, Water Programs Manager, and Chris O'Reilly is a Project Manager with the Stormwater Utility, and today to talk with you about updates that we propose for the Stormwater Code, and it covers a couple chapters in the code and kind of moving around a little bit to make more sense and some adjustments over time. So we'll talk through those today. First slide is kind of the overall what we're talking about. The main requirement for this was to update our code to be in compliance for our Phase 2 stormwater permit, which is the Department of Ecology provides that to Spokane County for our urban areas. And there's a number of requirements that these code adjustments bring us into compliance for. But also there's a need for some clerical updates and just making more sense. So the three chapters that we worked through in descending orders, Title 12, which is related to subdivisions, and that one's a relatively minor change, so we'll talk about that one first. And then the Chapter 9.14 is about new development, and it deals with how the county regulates stormwater for new development. And then this Chapter 8.25 is actually a new section. We pulled some information out of 9.14 and moved it into 8.25. And that one's specifically about illicit discharges, and that's in the Health and Sanitation Hardin County Code. So the next slide, please. This Title 12 revision is to update the manual that we have. The Spokane Regional Stormwater Manual has been around for a long time, but it isn't referenced in code, and so that's the majority of the change in there, is bringing that up to be consistent with our regulations. The next slide is the next chapter. This is 9.14, and this one, this is the most substantive one. But again, it's to going through the bullets from the top, and I won't go through all of them, but is to add clarifying language. But it also deals with how our access to private development. So you have one of the requirements in stormwater management is that we require private properties to do stormwater controls, put in infrastructure to control those. But the Department of Ecology under our NPDES permit says we need to be able to inspect those and modify them if needed. If an owner is causing problems to the public infrastructure, we need to be able to have an option to go in and inspect those and modify those. And so we've added that text in there to allow that, give us access. And then the other piece is this erosion and sediment control. There's a lot of concern about, and concern from the public when you see soil running across a road surface and getting into the roadway where people are driving. And so there's a lot of need to make sure that we manage that appropriately, both on private and on public property. Part of this is to increase the penalties. So we're doubling the penalties. It goes from $250 to $500 a day for smaller projects and from $1,000 to $2,000 for larger projects. And those are, again, each day. And then finally, the bottom section here is dealing with swales. It's the grassy areas that people are required to install. And it allows us to enforce on those properties if people are doing things that are causing problems into the public right of way or public property. We have changing our code to be able to manage those.
So my question on that, and Commissioner French, do you want to go or you want me to ask my question?
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So then have you worked with Public Works? Because a lot of these issues are the same things that Public Works deals with as people are doing different road construction and all of that.
Yes, for sure. And that's where 914 is in for the section is roads, approach, and drainage for new construction. So this ties that in. So as people are building projects, we're tying in that review process. And so we work really closely with Public Works for development services and making sure that the projects are meet the standards for the county roads. And so the stormwater piece is just a component of the requirements from Public Works.
Okay, I guess I just want to make sure that within the Public Works section, because usually it's in their contracts that they've got to meet those the contractor has to meet those requirements. So, so just making sure that it all syncs up correctly.
So I was misunderstanding. You're talking about Public Works as in construction projects.
Right.
Thank you.
Because I mean, like, looking
Yeah.
at this picture, I mean, it's construction project of
Correct.
private property is what you're talking about.
Correct.
But then we have Public Works has contractors doing,
Construct for
yes.
public construction. Thank you. I misunderstood that. So yes, for sure. And so those actually, most of those often fall under their own specific stormwater permit that they have to get from the Department of Ecology if they're large enough for big construction over an acre. They have to get their own.
I guess I just want to make sure that everything is in sync with each other on that.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yes.
That's what I was just trying to make sure, because I know that it's ends up in different sections, and so it's like just making sure that if we're making revisions here, that's driving the other sections. So, thank you. Okay, Commissioner French.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, two questions. One, what have you done with regard to outreach to the development community to, one, make sure that they're aware that this is coming down, and two, to see if there are any other ideas or any other suggestions from the development community in terms of how we can address this? So what kind of outreach have you done? And then I'll ask my second question.
So outreach specifically to the development community, I would say probably none. That's the answer there. It did this change did require a SEPA review, so we did go out for public comment in the SEPA review. Not that creates a lot of interest from the development community, but we received no comments on that. So
Yeah, well, was there any notice about it to the general development community?
So no, there was not. So we would have advertised this in a standard SEPA process to agencies. But no, you're right, that it did not go out to the general development community.
So we've developed the regulations going to impact the development community, and we've done it in a vacuum, and they don't have any knowledge that this is coming down the pike. So the other question is, has there been any assessment in terms of the impact to cost?
So generally so not specifically towards cost. Generally, these are requirements that exist, and we're kind of cleaning up how they're listed in code. I don't know, Krista, any comments on that?
No, you mean as far as how these requirements will impact the developers and the cost for that?
To comply,
Well-
your question is the cost to comply.
Well, there's both the cost to comply, but there's also here we are struggling with a shortage of housing, and yet we're going to require more investment that's going to make affordable housing continue to be more challenging and stuff. And so I just don't want to be saying one thing with one part of the county in terms of our outreach, and then doing something that is counterproductive to what we're trying to get accomplished, which is affordable housing and stuff. So just want to put that on the record, because it seems that it's counterproductive, and this is something that we're generating. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Commissioner French, do you mind if I talk to this for 1 second?
Please do.
I ran the land development group for about a dozen years, and we've always required erosion and sediment control plans. They're part of every land development package, whether it's a commercial building permit or a residential development. And they're always in there. We provide an initial inspection historically where we go out and make sure they were actually installed prior to starting construction. And then we also will follow up on any reports we get of erosion, mainly tracking off of the site or during big rain events. If we get erosion out into the public roadways, we go out and we follow up on those and make sure they get corrected. This is essentially adding more teeth, and it's required. Ecology through our permits requiring us to add more teeth. But we've always done this. This is just, and frankly, having a little more teeth wouldn't be awful. You've spent a fair amount of time in the development world too, Commissioner French, and sometimes it's a little challenging to motivate some of our developers that maybe aren't concerned with erosion as much as they might be. So, it's not a bad thing in my mind. I'd be happy we have existing email distribution lists that we could send this out to and let people know it's coming. I do like giving people a heads up. That's always a good thing, but it's really not going to change their day-to-day or what we're expecting of them. So the cost impact, unless they're really creating a situation, should be negligible.
Okay, I appreciate your comments, Matt. But my concern is, one, making sure that there's notice to the development community so that they don't get to the permit counter and then realize there are additional requirements that they weren't aware of, and then end up having to spend more time in the design process to comply. But being effective in terms of the drainage system is obviously a goal that we all share. But the other part of it is that we don't know whether the development community would have had additional ideas that would have helped enhance our drainage system. And so that was one of the reasons why I was wondering whether anybody in the development community was part of this, because there might be other ideas out there that we just don't know about that might help improve the quality of the drainage system overall, especially for property owners and developers that have to maintain these things. They're not cheap to maintain, as you're aware, and sometimes they can fail and they can become very expensive to try and rebuild. And it's not just a matter of throwing grass seed on top of it. Sometimes you have to go all the way down and rebuild from scratch. So, we clearly don't want to do this stuff twice. So I just making an observation with regard to, how we came up with the development regulation. I'm not saying the regulations aren't bad. It's just that nobody knows about them, and then we're going to adopt them, and then we'll deal with the repercussions of it.
Yeah, no, you make very valid points, Commissioner French. The one thing I would say is this doesn't change the requirements beyond the fact that we have to get access to private property. That is new. And frankly, it's not inappropriate. If we're having a problem with a private drainage facility, having the ability to get in there and inspect it and then have a meaningful conversation with whoever the current owner is probably a very relevant thing. But this will not change what we're expecting out of them when they come in with a plan set or a development. So it's the initial impact during site development is actually pretty minimal. It's being able to get with them later, inspect them, let them know what's going on with their facility, because it's probably not top of mind for most of these folks once they're an HOA or a commercial development. So, hopefully more good than bad. And honestly, I don't see any additional cost for a developer, which is always the first point they want to get to with me when we change anything. It would have been a good idea to go out to them ahead of time, though. I don't argue that. I do like it when we don't act in a vacuum and we go out and we solicit input in a meaningful way ahead of changing regulations. But frankly, this one, we are doing the minimum that we are allowed to do through our permit. So it's even if they wanted less, we're not gonna do less, and there's no flexibility in these minimums that we're doing, so it's kinda is what it is, one of the mandates we get, so.
So one last question, Madam Chair, if you don't mind.
Yes, go ahead.
So with regard to getting access to a failed feature, I know that in some cases we've actually required easements for the drainage swales areas so that we do have access, but on private properties where we don't have that access via easement, what is the mechanism that you are anticipating using to be able to get access, to be able to get back onto private property and initiate some kind of construction? Because if you're getting onto the property, my guess is it's because you need to repair or fix. And then what's the mechanism for recapturing that cost if we have to repair or fix a feature and then go after the property owner for reimbursement? I assume that that's what we would want to do.
Yeah, you would need you would need entry and inspection ability at a minimum to actually rebuild them. To be honest, if it got that bad, we're probably going through the legal system and we would have to show damage to the public right of way or somebody else. If it's private party to private party, we wouldn't even be in the loop. If it's damaging the public facilities, the public roadway or the public drainage facilities, if they weren't responsive to our request to make repairs, we'd be filing a lawsuit and going down the path with them.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
You bet, thank you.
There's one final slide on the 8.25, and this is a new section that we have put for illicit discharge detection and elimination. IDDE is a term. There's some examples in the photo, kind of things that we see across the community. Unfortunately, not very often, but can happen. And this just pulls that out of the new development section and puts it in its own section so that we're able to better enforce that. And it has an escalating enforcement process so that if someone were to take one of these actions as represented in the figure, we could have a fine. And if they were then to repeat that action within a short time, we can increase the fine to make sure that they understand that. Though education is the first step we would take to explain why that's not allowed. But it does allow for fines in this case as well. I can take more questions, but just as an update for where this is going, there'd be a notice of hearing on March 5th, and then the hearing would be March 19th is what we're tentatively looking at if we go forward, and then the code would go into effect.
I just had a related, unrelated, so the stormwater requirements from ecology, have those been updated recently to allow for different types of treatments rather than just grassy swales?
So the
Because I know that that's been an ongoing,
for low impact development
Yes.
option, yeah, so there, I don't know, Christine.
Yeah, I can talk to that. So there's always been other treatment options other than swales, like filteras are an option. We've explored sand filters. They're smaller, they basically act as a swale, but they're smaller and they can fit in, a sidewalk rather than taking up the whole right of way. So that's always ongoing. Ecology and jurisdictions are always exploring different options and doing different studies. So we do have other options than swales. It's just usually the one that most of the developers pick.
is that because it's more challenging to do like native plants or other types of treatments? It just drives me crazy that, we're asking people during the summers to like not water as much,
Yeah.
to preserve our aquifer, but we're having people put in grassy swales and water the grass when, we have other types of plants that can take in, stormwater.
And they can't actually use native vegetation. That is an option in our stormwater manual. So it's really up to the developer on what
So
they
it is
install.
allowed and it's not challenging to get that approved.
No.
Okay.
It still provides the same treatment requirements, so.
I know at one point that they were still developing those regulations, but those are on the books. You're allowed to do that. Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's really it's the soil layer with organic matter. It doesn't have to be green grass that's irrigated continuously.
Yes.
That's the kind
thank you.
Thank you.
In regards to 9.14, are you gonna reach out to anybody in sort of the construction, to Commissioner French's point? Maybe we should reach out at this point, just notify them of the public hearing, so if they wish to come testify or take part in that process. So, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's gonna take us next to Kevin.
All right, well, good morning again. I promise this will take only like 45 minutes, not an hour like yesterday.
Sounds good.
No, this is just a quick brief on our co-responder mental health MHP grant that we get from WASPIC. This is the contract with the city of Spokane. The award was back in June, and we finally got the contract through all of the requirements of Spokane Police and County. So it's a 1.386 million. That's to cover salaries and everything, and fringe benefits for 4 police officers. And it's a continuation of the grant and the partnership we've been doing with Spokane City for our co-responder program, mental health crisis co-responder program.
And how much do we get?
We got 3.2 million total, and so the rest of it goes to pay for our 3 co-responders and the contract with Frontier Behavioral Health for the clinicians. This is just the Spokane City part.
Okay, sorry. Commissioner Jordan.
So this pays for the clinicians as well?
This pays just for the city police officers.
Okay.
The Frontier Behavioral Health contract that I believe it's already got through is pays for the clinicians.
Okay, and that's the same funding source, it's just a different.
We have to have a contract with every
Okay.
every partner within the grant. So.
And what's the time frame on that clinician contract, do you recall off the top of your head?
It's probably, well, I can't remember if that was a 1 year or 2 year. This is
Yeah.
a 2-year agreement.
Okay. All right, reason I ask is I had an opportunity to go do a ride-along with BHU, which I appreciate the sheriff's office setting that up. Learned a lot. And it sounds like of course, workforce issues with clinicians is still an issue. I think they said it was like 2.5 out of 7 filled positions right now. I know there's a lot of work to try to rearrange the requirements and those types of things. I'm just wondering if when that contract comes up, we could really look at it again, and potentially is there a way to restructure things so that we're paying more for the clinicians? I'm sure that's been considered, but just raise it.
One of the findings we had from WASPIC when they came in and evaluated our program is that we didn't have necessarily a competitive process for the clinician contract.
Right.
And a lot of that's because we've been partnering with Frontier Behavioral Health since 2017. So it was my desire this year to go out to some sort of bid and to see what else is out there and what other services we could find, because you're right, it has been an ongoing issue the last couple of years for clinicians for a lot of myriad of different reasons. Not all of those reasons are Frontier's fault, but there's a lot of different reasons. So we need to come up with a better plan to get those seats filled.
Related, but unrelated. I was just and I asked the Madam Chair at a future date, can you come give us sort of an update on sort of your statistics around these code of play? I know in the past we received actually it was back when it was Under Sheriff Knowles came in and he gave us this great presentation. I mean, it had everything from number of contacts with individuals, the number of individuals that were diverted away from the jail because of this program and all. It was fascinating information, but I think it's probably been 2.5 years since we've really got that big deep dive in how successful the program is. It's very valuable.
I have all the information. In fact, I presented it to WASPIC for the grant application. So I have it all in a packet and everything. So I'll get it on the agenda.
Yeah, I'd love to see that an updated version of that presentation, because it was just really shows how successful the program is.
Yeah, so that'd be great for a Monday
Okay.
briefing. Scott.
Heather just confirmed that the date of the Frontier Behavioral Health contract coincides with the date of this, so they both would expire June of 25. And then Kevin, I recall maybe a year and a half ago, the Sheriff's Department and SPD had identified that there was challenges with being able to hire the clinicians. And I think Justin Johnson, you guys had asked for some of his assistance, and I think he meant two things. One was the pay, and one was the clinician level requirement certification. And I think you guys collectively found some flex within that to help. Is that right? Does that recall?
Yes, and they implemented those. It has to do with bachelor's level versus master's level clinicians and what their education is in and what their clinical work is in. I know more now about this than I ever thought I would, but it apparently it matters and it's different, right? And so they were able to work through that. What has been the holdup for the last 6 months, maybe even longer, is a disagreement between Frontier Behavioral Health and the Spokane Police Department on how background checks are done on clinicians, because they're not commissioned staff, but they were having them sign waivers and doing, a full background because they're in a police car. And so there was a disagreement, and that, I think they just worked that out. And so I believe we're gonna start seeing some new employees here pretty soon. It took a while to fix that, so.
But not an issue that the Sheriff's Department was having.
We were not doing the background checks, and we, our position was they're riding in police cars and they need to complete a background, to the satisfaction of the Spokane Police Department, so. But I think they met and they worked that out, and I think we're gonna see some change there. And hopefully progress.
So would there be a challenge with, you said you were thinking about putting it out for multiple bids or proposals? I think that the issue is we've resolved some of the education issues, the background checks, but not necessarily the paying because that's really up to Frontier, right, with their pay scale. So just, is there a reason why we wouldn't put it out and see if we could get some different providers just competing for the contract?
No, we plan on doing that. It's just, it keeps falling down to it keeps falling down on my list of things to do. But no, because I was waiting for all the other issues to get worked out too, because I assumed that, or maybe rightfully or wrongfully, that another private company would have the same issues as Frontier as far as the background checks, everything goes. So I want them to kind of work all that stuff out, and we'll address that. I know Chris Weiss and I have met and talked about putting it out to bid, and I think it's a good thing to do, even if we have multiple partners with the clinicians and not everybody works for one department. And there was also, there's been talk about hiring them in-house and having them be our own employees too. That's what I met with Justin Johnson about. We talked about in depth, and at the time, we didn't see a way to pay them any more than what Frontier was paying them. So it wasn't the immediate fix that we thought it was going to be. So that's why we kind of went a different route. The clinician, the co-responder clinician problem is a nationwide problem, just like law enforcement. The availability of recruits for law enforcement. So. It's a challenge everywhere, because this is kind of a new thing, relatively new thing, but finding the right mix of expertise and training and experience with the level of pay to get someone that's willing to, that has all this, is willing to do it for this, has been challenging all over the place. There are places that pay a lot more, but those places are in King County and, the west side or higher cost of living areas, and so. Every Heights has a program. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's the same co-responder program funded through WASPIC, just like ours is. They have hired their clinicians in-house, so the Airway Heights Police Department employs them. They're paid significantly more than the Frontier Behavioral Health clinicians are, and they're having a lot of success. In fact, I think both of their clinicians were former Frontier Behavioral Health clinicians. So. And it's going well, so that may be a model to look at. I was involved in that. I helped with the hiring process and everything, so I assisted them with all that stuff. So I'm willing to look at anything because I want the program to be successful and as effective as possible, and I think it's worth it.
But this is just accepting the grant money.
This is just,
And we can
this,
decide.
all this
Okay.
is the contract with Spokane Police, so we
Got
can, they can bill us and we can pay them through with the grant money.
Got it, okay.
I just wanna say, when I went on the ride along, we had a period of downtime where we weren't responding to, or he wasn't responding to a call, and he took me to visit a gentleman, just kind of checking in on people that they've had contact with over time, and this is a guy who had a successful business and got into meth and just kind of went downhill with his mental health and drug addiction, and the co-responder unit had responded a couple times and helped him stabilize and check in with him, connecting with resources. He was clean and sober for several years, was thanking the officers, so it's really life-saving work, so.
I think the two main successes in this program is, one of them is reducing the capacity of the emergency rooms at the jails, because these, generally speaking, unless there's been a crime committed, these people don't belong in that area. And the other one is the follow-up, and that's one of the main components of the program that we sell to, why we get the grant is because of the follow-up visits and the continued contact with people that they've assisted or stabilized. And so I'm glad you got to do that. I'm glad you got to see that. That's one of the biggest parts of the program. And I may be coming back for follow-up with this because SPD has, Spokane Police Department has petitioned WASPIC for additional funds because they didn't get their program fully funded through this round. So there may be another $750,000 coming back. WASPIC hasn't made a decision yet, so you may be seeing this again. It'll just be an addition.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. So then that's gonna take us to Vicky
And the crew.
and a crew. There we go. Bring them all up to the table.
This is a joint effort. This has been a moving target, so things will probably change even as we talk about it.
Sounds exciting.
It is exciting.
Modernization.
It's a fun word,
Yes,
part of
okay.
the process.
So we'll start out with just a little refresher so that we all know where we're at. So the majority of county employees are paid on what we call pay through. And what that means is the check on the 15th pays people through the 15th, first of the month through the 15th. So what that means is you have 1 week where you're getting paid for what actually happened, you've got 1 week that's a guesstimate, and then we're correcting the week that was 3 weeks prior. It is a nightmare, to say the least. Public Works and our extra help folks are on what's normal pay, which is there's a cutoff of the 6th, and then the check is on the 15th. So you're getting paid for actual time of the 22nd of the previous month to the 6th of the current month, and you get paid on the 15th. So after lots of work over 15 years, that is finally now in the union contracts that we can make this jump. And so if you want to go to the calendars, this jump is going to happen in April. So this is what it looks like right now for most of the employees. The star on the 15th is payday, and it's paying for that block. The star on the 31st pays for that block. So now we're going to go to the next page, and this is when the jump happens. The star on the 15th is for the period of the 1st through the 6th, which is a short check. So knowing that many of our employees would have difficulty in doing that, a lot of the negotiation with the unions have been to find a way to bridge that. And so now we're trying to come up with the specifics on how to do that. So the next sheet, and sorry, Al, you'll just have to look at the screen. Yes, keep going.
This is it.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry, it's the Word document. So now we're trying to work out the details, and we do need the board to, in the very near future, pass a resolution. The first part of the resolution is gonna be to standardize the pay periods. And so those pay periods would be the 7th of the month through the 21st will be paid on the last day of the month, unless that day falls on a weekend or holiday. And then it's the previous business day. And then the period of the 22nd through the 6th will be paid on the 15th. So that's the first thing that you'll see in that resolution once we get it all finalized. The second portion of the resolution is going to be the actual bridge process for the gap. How can employees cover that gap? So Ron, if you want to move it down just a little bit. Right there, yep. So we've looked at those things that are available to the individual employees. So that'll be paid time off or vacation, depending upon which pay group you're in. Sick, catastrophic sick, floating holiday, personal holiday, and any comp time leave balances. So we were trying to figure out how to say half of a paycheck. So at one point we came up with 1/48 of their annual wage-based compensation. We're still debating that, so that might be a little bit of change. But basically, we just need to come up with a definition of what are you going to be able to bridge? What's the maximum amount that you're going to be able to take from your leave balances?
Those could look different depending on if you're a 37.5-hour employee or a 40-hour employee. So that's what Vicky's alluding to, is when you guys get the resolution next week, we'll either have hours plugged in or a 1/48. We're still trying to figure that out, but it is different depending on what hours group that you are part of.
Yeah, so we're testing some ideas on how to actually calculate this out, and we're running into some technical issues, but we'll have those worked out. For any employee utilizing the bridge, there'd be no buyback in the future. So right now, there is cash outs available during the year to certain employees. This is not one of those normal cash outs. This is a one-time only. So that's all that particular section is saying. And then in order to make it possible for some of our newer employees or employees who don't have much in the way of leave balance, even if they've been here for quite a few years, we are looking at allowing them to go negative in vacation or PTO. It does come with restrictions that they will not get to continue to increase the negativity in their balance. They cannot use any additional vacation or PTO leave until they have gotten back to a point that they actually have a leave balance to use. So for some, the accrual is going to depend on how many years they've been here. So for some, it could take only a couple of months to get all the way back to zero, or for others, it could take quite a few months. But it gives them the opportunity, when they have no other leave balances available, to go negative and then just not be able to take time off that's paid in the near future. And finally, in that little section, if the employee separates and has a negative leave balance, then we would be able to take that from their last paycheck. And so that does mean that anybody who uses that particular option will have to sign an attestation acknowledging that.
And that will be included on the form. So as we're looking at the process for this, as much as you all know how much I hate paper, we will be using paper forms to manage this through our Paytex, so that anybody that is utilizing this and goes into that negative balance will sign off on the attestation of, I understand, in the event I leave the county and still have a negative balance, the final amount will be withheld on my last paycheck. Which we'll actually be able to do because we will be in a normal payroll cycle, meaning that the hours that they've worked will have been prior to their last day with us. So pretty standard with what you see when other entities make a shift like this to allow for that option, but making sure that attestation is in place up front, because we are in Washington and Washington requires us to have some signatures on file. So we, in that form, one of my admins is finishing it as we speak, and then Vicky's team will run a final review on it, and then our goal is to get it out to employees hopefully the next week, early March, to be returned by the end of March for the one-time event that will be on the 15th paycheck.
And so then, the next two, numbers 5 and 6, are just again reiterating that this is a one-time only. So we tried to say it in every way possible to make sure. The last item is just to take care of those people who are hired after March 22nd, well, not hired, but who actually begin employment, I should say. After March 22nd through April 6th, that they would not receive a paycheck on March 31st, that their pay period will be considered March 22nd, starting March 22nd and ending April 6th, and that they'll receive their first paycheck on the 15th, and they cannot use this bridging option. So they will immediately go into, they'll be the first people going immediately into that new pay period. So just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of this. Like I said, this has been something we've been working on for at least
Since I came.
15 years. Yes, I've burned through 2 separate chief deputy auditors on this, a couple of folks in HR as negotiators. So we are finally there. And there's a few reasons to do this, of course, and part of that is to pay people their actual time and to eliminate the mistakes that happen when people are doing things based on estimates and then trying to make corrections and they mess up the correction and then we have to do another correction. And as Ashley alluded to, in the state of Washington, you have to have a lot of paperwork, a lot of signatures, and if we do an overpayment to someone, it is a very long and complex process to get that money back. And that does happen, and it's happening more frequently.
And this will help with the retirement system as well.
Huge, yeah.
A huge piece of it
Yes.
is then everything is correct as it goes into the retirement system.
It'll be based on
for
actual
service hours.
time, yeah. So right now, every person who retires from Spokane County, we literally end up rebuilding their entire history here at Spokane County. And that is a lot of manpower going back 20, 30 years into boxes to pull stuff out.
Commissioner French.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Dalton, I want to thank you sincerely for reminding me of all the reasons why I hate accounting. So if a new employee starts on March 22nd, they're not going to get their first paycheck until April 15th, or they're going to work for the county for 3 weeks before they get paid. Is that right?
That's correct, and that's usually how it works
Yeah.
in the rest of the world.
That's pretty standard, Commissioner French.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and I worked at a lot of private entities before here, and that's really standard, because most employers are on a bi-weekly look back, so it's pretty normal. I was pretty amazed how the county processed payroll when I came here.
Okay. All right. Well, it's been a while since I had hired employees and stuff, and thank you for reminding me of that too. So the second question is, so our employees on April 15th, what kind of paycheck are they going to see? Is it going to be a reduced paycheck? Is it going to be, what exactly is it going to look like on April 15th? Because I know a lot of folks are going to be paying a big check to Uncle Sam. And so I just want to make sure they got money to cover it.
So on April 15th, the base paycheck will be about 1/2 of what the normal paycheck will be. But it's the employee's decision as to whether they want to have that smaller check or if they want to use their existing leave time or go into negative vacation or PTO leave to make that check the same as what they're accustomed to.
And Commissioner French, I did my best to color code to try and help people see kind of what those pay periods and pay dates look like. So on this slide that Ron has up for us, the paycheck on the 15th will include time for the 1st through the 6th. So that's what Auditor Dalton is speaking to when she says it's about half of what a normal paycheck would look like for regular hours. And then once we move to that next week with the new pay period starting the 7th through the 21st, which is in that kind of salmon color, the paycheck on the 30th goes back to what employees are accustomed to, which is that essentially 2 weeks of work. So it's
Okay.
just that one check that, because the pay periods are moving, it's not because people are being shorted. As you can see, we're consistently still paying all of the weeks. It's just because of the shift of the periods that we have to have one short pay period before we move into the new pay schedule.
Thank you.
I will confirm, every job I've worked in has paid the way we're moving to. So for new employees who are joining us on March 22nd or later, they will likely have a likely have a payroll coming from their previous job, which pays them for whatever remaining hours they work there. So it's very high likelihood if they did not take any time off between jobs, they'll still have a full paycheck even when they get the counties on the 15th. So, and same with employees who leave service with the county, they'll have another paycheck coming to them for some amount of days after they've already left service. So in all cases where our employees will be made whole, it's just notwithstanding the employees who are with us right now, there will be some impact to them, but they have now the option of mitigating the impact if they want to use the combination of options laid out to them.
And we're not the only county doing this. So for whatever reason, many counties in the state of Washington were on this bizarre pay-through schedule, and most of the counties, big counties, have moved off. Pierce did it about, I think it was about 10 years ago. It is survivable, though it will be somewhat painful for some employees.
Has there been like communication out earlier than this? Okay, so
Started
people are,
6 months ago.
okay, I was getting a little bit worried thinking we haven't got the word out yet.
I think I remember getting couple emails
Maybe I missed
from
it.
Ashley.
Yes.
And
Okay.
we've encouraged department heads to actually talk to their individual employees, because as we discovered, a lot of employees, when they see an all-county email, they delete.
Well,
So,
Depends who sends it.
I think starting 6 months ago, there was this exact presentation was provided to elected official department heads. And then the same email went out to employees, and I wanna say even midway through, similar thing. So there's been a regular,
Okay.
whether individuals have read it,
or
other
processed
question
it.
or processed it, but the team has done a really good job communicating out and trying to get some clarity, multiple touches.
and it's in every issue of the HR Flash.
Yeah, every news
So
flash.
it's every,
It's also on our HR webpage on the comp tile, right? Like we've tried to put it in as many places as we can.
And it was negotiating the contracts over the last several years.
3 years.
Yeah, so I mean,
That it would happen.
it's been
Sure,
a
okay.
process to,
And we direct with the unions, to your point, so even with when we pushed the all county communication, we also directly reached out to all of our bargaining units and said, here's it, like any questions, so Josh has been regularly communicating with them as well.
I mean, it has been an active conversation since 2015 for me, I know. When I first came to the auditor's office, it was tasked with, we gotta get this done. But we had to get through the union agreements first before we could do it, you know, and so just so many steps to really make it happen and figure out the best way to do it. But yes, every employer that I know is on called a leg pay, basically. Because you have to work your hours and then report them to then get paid on those, which payroll processing takes a little bit of time. So, or a lot of time when we would, you know, have to turn in a timesheet, as everyone knows, estimating the rest of your hours, you know, leading up to the end of the month or the 15th, which is just not a normal situation for anyone. State's always been on a leg pay. I mean, I think they pay on the 10th and the 25th, you know, so it's very standard for everyone to have that happen.
So just a reminder to our elected officials, we do not have these options available, so our paychecks will be half of normal, just so you know. So we are pushing the pay period back, so, yeah.
Well, and that has also led to dissatisfaction with employees not being able to get paid their accurate hours if they worked overtime or whatnot, because it was a guess. We had to force some numbers in, which this will help solve for that. We're not doing the guesstimations anymore.
The overpay is actually where this is most critical. We do more overpays than we would like, either of us. And we can't just withhold it on the next check, so we have to actually go, put a letter on file, get an agreement in place, how much are they willing to pay us? If they leave the county, we can't just go garnish, right? That has to go through a whole process, so overpay, and it's incredibly time consuming for the auditor's office and for the HR office. And so this will be so helpful for us.
Because once we commit to payroll, which is 3 days prior to payday, actually it's 4 days prior to payday, we're done. We can't make any changes. So if anybody separates in that time period, we can't change their paycheck. It's already in process. Or actually, it's finished and headed to the bank. So that's it. Took a little more time than I thought we would, but yeah. So elected officials, just remember that you will be getting half a paycheck, while everybody else who has any kind of leave balance has the opportunity to make that decision themselves and use leave or go negative in PTO vacation to make that up. So you'll be seeing this resolution pretty soon. Hopefully we'll get it submitted tomorrow. We just have a couple tweaks left to do.
So can you send out an email to all the electeds, I mean, just so the judges and everybody, I mean, specifically to them, I guess?
Excuse me.
I mean, obviously, I mean, it is what it is, but I mean, I don't know if you let them know, I mean, like, you're just letting us know specifically that's how it's working. I think, you know, because sometimes we think we only have a few elected officials, but we have actually
We have a lot.
So
I was gonna wait a little closer.
I could probably give them a heads up now.
Yeah.
And then, you know, just as a reminder, because they're gonna need to adjust their, you know, spending for that time period. So.
And we did have, so the ones that were able to make it to the elected official department head meeting last month, we presented again, so hopefully.
I'm just thinking judges.
No, I agree, and hopefully
Yeah.
Ashley Callan and John Witter have been on there helping, they're communicating, but to your point, we'll get something out to them just to make sure.
I wouldn't wanna, rely on staff to tell them what their paycheck is gonna be, what they think it is for that time period. I think that's better coming from us and Vicki. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so that's the end of our printed agenda, but I know we have several miscellaneous items, so we're gonna start with Chandra.
Good morning, everyone. So I believe I'm being asked for an update on where we're at with FEMA. I was over at their ops briefing this morning. So their team, I believe their full footprint is now here in Spokane County. They're currently working out of a conference room at the Centennial, but they're in conversation with DSHS to take space at the old DSHS building down on Boone, because they will be here for several months. So the good news is that as of the update this morning, they have 219 individuals who have already connected with them and registered. The inspection teams are out in the field. They started that yesterday. They were, as soon as people started registering, they did start the callbacks and started scheduling appointments. So the inspection teams are actively out in the field today. I took them around. I took the leadership and the logistics team on a tour of both fires on Friday, and we visited the Country Church of the Open Bible up in Elk. They got to see the Connex Box project, and they've determined that we will use the Country Church location for the Elks Disaster Resource Center. And then we went down to West Plains and viewed the West Plains, and then they're currently in conversation with the city of Medical Lake to use a room that's available in City Hall for the Medical Lake Disaster Resource Center. Those should both locations should be up and running on Thursday is the goal. And so they will be, as I said previously, very similar to the Disaster Assistance Center that we stood up in the immediate aftermath, except these will be the federal programs, including SBA and disaster legal services, all sorts of different things, but at the federal level for people to ask for. Probably the biggest challenge for them is this is a little bit different because of the time lag, the 5.5 months that we've had. We have done significant work here. We've leveraged our state funding as well as thousands and thousands of dollars of local funding. And so the conversations that FEMA's having with individuals, it's going to be a little more complex to tease out the avoidance of duplication of benefits. That's one of FEMA's primary concerns, and so they'll be working with our disaster case managers and then the two local groups, the Reimagine Medical Lake and the Elk Strong Committee, working closely with them to understand what funds they have pushed out into the community already. So I think things are moving well. I think once we get the DRCs up and running on Thursday, people will be able to come in and sit down face to face. Of course, they're still encouraging the registration through the phone number or the website as well. But 219 registered as of this morning, so that's pretty good progress. And just 3 days, 4 days.
And what do we think our total number is
For
people that should be registering?
So, like we talked about, so we anticipate somewhere around 850 is what we're anticipating. We'll see how that plays out. The important thing to note is that so while we were gathering our data, we were really focused on the folks who had completely lost their homes. So FEMA encourages anyone, so the number should theoretically be higher. For example, when we were out on Friday, there's a home, I think it's on, I wanna say South Hallett, in Medical Lake, where the home is still standing, but the rear wall, the siding is completely melted. So that's an individual that FEMA will really wanna talk to, because clearly their house was still standing, so we couldn't help them with our state and local money. But that is certainly something that FEMA can assist them with if there's a gap, with their insurance or something to get that siding replaced.
Okay. And I apologize, how many so far? 200?
219.
Thank you. And so with the declaration, then this brings FEMA in, right, to come in and help and figure out what the needs are. And then is it grants, is it loans?
It's all of the above, so it really depends on what programs the individual is deemed qualified for. There's certainly folks who will get direct payment, they'll get a check from FEMA. But it all depends on what their eligibility is, what resources they've received up to this point, and what that remaining gap is. So it'll be everything, it'll be direct check, it'll be grants, it'll be, the possibility for the SBA loans.
No, just very exciting, thankful to the federal government to make the declaration, so thank you.
And then just one other point, because we were given public assistance for emergency response costs and debris management, that means we will be utilizing the PA funding as opposed to the FMAG. We had talked previously about we would be putting those costs against our FMAG grants. We'll be able to shift that to the PA, and we'll be able to use the FMAG for other mitigation projects and things.
Okay, so that's our match money, right?
No,
Public
no, so the public assistance is the federal program. The FMAG is the fire management assistance grants that we knew we were awarded pretty immediately after the fires. But they cover mitigation projects as well as emergency response costs. So we'll be taking what we had anticipated of our emergency response costs. So that would be the sheriff's office overtime, any of the costs associated with our EOC, all of that. We had originally planned on putting that against the FMAG, but we will be shifting that to the public assistance.
Okay. And then on the money that we had to match the state,
Yes,
how is that? It's still the same?
yes,
That doesn't get shifted or any of that?
no, because that's obligated to our state money match.
Okay. Commissioner Jordan?
What kinds of possibilities does that open up for mitigation projects if we use the FMAG in a different way?
So the FMAG it's really, we can use it for fuels management, public education, anything that's going to help mitigate our fire risk. Our fire districts utilize it a lot. I think our Parks Department is going to apply for some as well because they have some fuels management they need to do, as well as Conservation District. So the FMAG itself is really focused on that mitigation. What can we do, to hopefully avoid this in the future?
So in order for FEMA to come out to any of these properties, they have to register at is it still disasterassistance.gov? That's still the best place for folks to go?
Yep.
Okay, or the 1-800 FEMA number, okay.
Yep.
When somebody from FEMA comes to the house, is it literally, essentially like an appraiser where they are surveying all the damage like that, taking notes?
Similar,
Is that
similar.
Is that essentially what the people should expect?
Yeah,
Okay.
they wanna come out and they want to look at the extent of the damage. They want to have that one-on-one conversation with the homeowner about what the impact was to them and what their experience was. They're interested in all of that.
Okay, and I saw in the news, several of the news stations were covering, there's already people trying to pretend to be FEMA employees, that there's already scammers out there?
People are always willing to do the bad thing. So I think like it said in the original press release, and I actually have some press scheduled this afternoon as well. But the key really is for people to understand that the only people FEMA will be calling are the people who have registered. So FEMA's not gonna cold call people.
Okay.
And so when you register, you're given your 9-digit ID number. And when FEMA calls you to schedule the appointment, because that's why they're calling, is to schedule that one-on-one appointment, they will have that ID number and that's all they're gonna be interested in. They will not be asking people for financial information, for banking information, for their social security number, any of that. So if people are receiving a call and those are the types of questions they're being asked, then they need to hang up immediately and follow up with law enforcement.
So
Because
even if FEMA knows your house burned down or you were impacted, if you have not registered, they will not reach out to you.
Correct.
The victims of the fires have to initiate that first
Yes,
contact.
they do.
Okay.
Yes, and when FEMA's out in the field, you'll be able to tell. They'll have their gear on, they'll all have, their ID tags. So it will be obvious who they are.
Okay.
And if people feel unsure about it, they can call and verify too. That's perfectly, and the FEMA folks are used to all of this, so they're not gonna be upset, they're not gonna be offended. They're very much aware of the concerns that people have about identity theft, and they're used to working within those parameters.
To one of the points Commissioner CUNY mentioned about the matching funds, a lot of that was for debris removal. How are those dollars being spent down? Is it being utilized? Do enough
Yes.
people
So.
know that those funds are available?
Yes, so our, the state funds that we have obligated to debris removal, those are actively being worked. We have, I don't haven't checked the database today yet, but we have quite a number of properties who have been completed. One of the properties actually is the family who's getting the first Connex box. They're getting ready to finish that up and place it on their property, and their property was cleared through one of our contracts. And that's part of the conversation about the public assistance and the debris management, is how are we going to bring that in alongside the work that's already being done through our state contracts.
And, I'm sorry,
I was just gonna ask, so then, and how does the long-term recovery group work with FEMA now that they're here? I mean, how does that all intertwine?
So we're actually still in the process of working through that, because typically, and as I said to the group this morning, when I gave my briefing for the FEMA team, I said, no shade, but y'all are late to the party. And so.
only by about 6 months.
Right, and it's typical for them to come into a community before anything has happened. And, so now they're coming in, and we've done a substantial amount of work. Our LTRG is up and solid and functional. So they have to kind of learn a new way of working within that. So what I think will probably happen is they will probably sign an information sharing agreement with the LTRG to just help facilitate those conversations about the types of assistance that the Unmet Needs Committee is providing, and that information. So Salvation Army is easy. They're a national level organization, so they already have information sharing agreements with FEMA. And so that allows them to have those conversations with the disaster case managers. Any other questions? Else?
Are we sort of past all the asbestos testing, or all the folks that are probably going to get that done? Have they been able to get the samples and get them to the lab?
We have a few stragglers.
Okay.
We did see actually quite a few properties in the tour on Friday, where folks have not yet started the clearing process. So we do have a few stragglers. We did have a list of folks who had said, no, I want to wait till the spring, or no, we're not done sifting, all that sort of stuff. So we'll continue to work that as long as we have those state funds available.
Commissioner French?
Yeah, thank you, Chandra, for the update. So with regard to the Salvation Army, I'm hearing two things. One, everybody as part of the team is new, and so there doesn't seem to be any experience in dealing with this kind of thing. And the other part of it is that there's a concern that they are still understaffed. From what I understand, they only have 3 case managers and a lot of folks that need assistance. What has been your experience, and are those legitimate concerns, and what can we do to help?
So we have 4 case managers. There's 2 case managers assigned to each community. And I honestly, sir, I have not heard, that people are waiting to connect. All 4 of the case managers, they have office hours every week. They're available through phone or email. So I honestly have not heard that.
Our office has also heard some complaints as well about
Yeah.
the quality of service, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a lack of experience and lack of leadership is what I'm hearing as terms of the cause. But yeah, if you could follow up on that. I mean, we appreciate them being there, but if there's something we need to do to help reinforce or whatever, just let us know.
I can certainly do that. I will check and get back with you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Do you have a number or ballpark number of how much of the state dollars have been spent down on debris removal or asbestos testing?
So on asbestos testing, I want to say we've spent about $68,000.
And what was our pot of money to that.
Our original
I
contractor.
thought we were several hundred thousand on that, right?
Yes, and so, our original contract for asbestos testing was $500,000. And we had done that, because the guesstimates that people were giving us were, it'll be 15,000, it'll be 20,000 per property. And that's just not what has played out. The average cost is more like $2,100. So we're hoping to get through that as quickly as we can so that we can amend our contract with the state and push that money to different use.
Okay. And then on the debris removal?
Debris removal, I'm still waiting on a number of invoices from a couple of our contractors, but right now, we're sitting at probably about $100,000 spent in debris removal, so again,
Out of?
out of 3.75
I
million.
was gonna say, I thought it was a couple million, okay, okay.
Yep.
Wow, so we got a lot of money still.
We do,
Wait, oh, wow.
we do, and I'm hoping, now.
The fact that people don't know to ask to be reimbursed for expenses, or what, I mean, that's a big gap.
I think it's more just that we have quite a few folks who haven't been ready to take that step and move forward.
Okay.
In going out on Friday, there were quite a few properties that have not been cleared. And I think it's a hard lift for folks. And even when they know that we have the ability to help them with it, it's getting to that point to pull the trigger, so to speak.
I mean, and I don't know what it costs to clear a whole property, but some of those numbers we were hearing early on was that one property could be 30 to 50,000 to clear. So I mean, if we've only spent $100,000, I mean, that's
Yeah,
like
and again,
two, three
it's
properties.
varying. We've had one property cleared for, I wanna say $5,000, but then we've had a couple more who've been up more in the 20,000, 40,000 range. It's just, it really varies.
Probably a more interesting stat would be how many properties have been signed up to be cleared
And
or
just
have
have
been cleared.
Okay.
Because Chandler's probably referencing the billing amount, but doesn't represent the activity that's actually occurring or the queued up activity.
Jeff, you had a question?
Much of this money expires the end of June because it's state budget cycle. So encourage people to do it now. You can get it submitted like 30 days through the month of July, but the work has to be completed by the end of this state budget cycle.
Yeah.
So to the extent possible, get people, if they're calling your office to get signed up, get on the agenda, get them moving.
Because that's absolutely right, our state money does expire on the 30th of June. Yes, Pat?
What, just out of curiosity, for communications purposes, what is Salvation Army able to help with? Number one, if somebody's a fire victim and calls them, I mean, what should they be calling Salvation Army for to get connected with disaster case manager? And then follow up to that, what is our mechanism for feedback about hearing whether people are able to access that, whether they're getting the needed help, or whether they're being told, no, we can't help?
So a couple of different things. So they need to connect with the case managers in order to get on our lists for the debris clearance and the asbestos testing. So the disaster case managers are kind of the doorkeeper for that. The disaster case managers are also handling the applications for the asbestos reimbursement program. Remember, we got that $175,000 from the health district, and we've spent about $100,000 of that in reimbursements to people who paid for their asbestos testing out of pocket. And so the DCMs are really the doorkeepers for all of that. And then in terms of quality assurance, I don't know what the Salvation Army leadership is doing, but I mean, that can certainly be part of the conversation that I have with them.
Are you hearing concerns in those long-term recovery group meetings being expressed about people feeling like they're just getting a no when there's not trying to get to a yes on other like unmet needs they might have, like a frozen battery or an RV line hose or hookup or something that froze or broke, and they're just looking for $100 or $500 cash assistance?
I don't think so, because I have a stack of invoices for RV repairs sitting on my desk right now. So I know people aren't being told no on that. So and part of it is, it's just, part of it is people. And I'm not saying that people don't have legitimate complaints or legitimate concerns. But the reality is when you're talking about disaster recovery, no matter what you do, it's never enough, it's never fast enough, and it's never exactly what I wanted. And so you have to kind of weigh what's being said with what is actually happening. Anything else?
So as a follow-up on that, then are most of the funds that are being spent through the disaster relief community group, so are you trying to spend down any state dollars first, and then I know there's like the Inovia Foundation, the private funds to help people as well?
So our state funds are obligated to specific tasks.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So what are the funds being used for, like the RV repairs and?
So that, the RV repairs is part of our $750,000 that we have in state money for individual assistance.
Okay.
And so that funding is covering the winterization of the RVs, it's covering RV repair, it's covering the Connex Box project, and then it's also covering some transitional housing. So we have rental assistance there. We also had quite a few folks who we put in hotels for that really severe cold snap we had when they decided their RV was just too cold and they wanted to be inside. So we did cover some hotel nights for folks out of that as well. What the long-term recovery group does is, while they provide input into our state funding, they're concerned primarily with the
private.
Community and the
Right.
private
Okay.
donations. And so they're working with the Inovia funding, they're working with the money that the LTRG received from the Home Builders Association and stuff like that. They have, because our funds are obligated, they have a lot more flexibility about how they can address things. And so what happens is individuals come in, they meet with the disaster case managers. If they have a need that's not covered under our state funding, then the disaster case managers will take those to the unmet needs committee of the LTRG, and it'll be addressed by those private funds.
So if we are to get the 1.25 million that we've requested from the state for more unmet needs, how does that move into the process?
So that would, primarily that will help us cover the additional years on the DCM contract, because we did sign a long-term contract with them, because this is long-term recovery. And then we'll look at the programs that are in place, and then where is the funding continuing to be needed. So we do have at least 2 national level VOAD community groups who are coming in, and they're ready to start home construction this spring. So they bring the labor, and so then it becomes on us and the LTRG to help provide the materials. So we do have some lumber and things that are being already donated, but part of that money would be going toward paying for supplies and building materials for these VOADs to use to actually construct the homes.
Yes, Inovia was very successful in sort of their fundraising immediately following the fires. I think I had heard a couple weeks ago their intent was that essentially that money will go to other nonprofits that provide services to the victims. Has any of that happened yet? Have they contracted with any nonprofits?
That has
Is
been actively happening.
Okay.
So Molly Sanchez, who is Inovia's financial officer, she is actually an LTRG board member.
Yep.
And she chairs the Unmet Needs Committee. So Innovia is very involved, and they've made a number of payments out to the New Hope Resource Center, which is a well-established nonprofit in the Elk area. Gina's been doing fabulous work up there, and so they're really a prime recipient of a lot of the Innovia funds so far. I know they've provided some to Reimagine Medical Lake as well. But yeah, they're very involved, and that money is definitely going out into the community.
Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming, I think, just to kind of understand how it's all working and all of
So
that, so.
there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of good being done, so.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you for all the work
You
you're
bet.
doing, I know it's
You
a
bet.
busy time. Okay, so then I think Jeff McMorris, you had, at least I've been told, with
Yeah.
all these miscellaneous that are coming.
So GSI is putting together their federal legislative agenda. It's a very different product, so don't be thinking earmark requests. This is more of a general, I would almost describe it more as an internal document for GSI, in that if somebody comes to them and asks them to participate in something, this would be more the guiding document that they could look to see if it fits in what they're working on. However, they have reached out to their membership, which of course includes us, if we would like to make any changes to this document. Additions, subtractions, there's a process, forms and paperwork that we fill out. It's not just a quick email that says we like this. And if it's something that's kind of more of unanimous consent there, it goes through easy. If it's something they're looking for more details, we might need to send a county representative to their RAC board to make our case for why it should be changed, whatever that change would be. Changes or suggestions, the forms are due next Tuesday by end of day. And then on the 8th, which I think is 3 days later next week, would be when their RAC meets, if we were to be called forward to make our case. And then this will be their federal agenda. But again, it's not, we've been talking earmarks, this is not really earmarks. As you look, there's 10 categories, 45 bullet points. So you could call it prioritizing horizontally. But it is a document to look through, see if there's something that you really think is missing, or you just really have heartburn over, like to see it moved. I think the one way that could be a benefit to us is when we are putting in for earmarks or other things, if what we're looking for is included in this, we could point to it to show some broad community support. So that is one way, in my mind, that we could use this as a support document.
So it looks like, I mean, so this is the 2023 agenda and just what's blue.
You can see this is the literal red
is
line,
Yeah.
blue line
so-
as it is.
Yeah, so their blue line, I mean, so substantially it's
Last year's
year's.
with some tweaks.
Okay, yeah.
Including the date going from 23 to 24.
Yeah.
So so this is definitely a staff
And
level.
at the
working
bottom, it
document.
says approved GSI board 3/26/23 at the bottom,
So we do have, we would need to get our stuff in by next week, and then I believe mid-April. Yeah, so March 8th would be if we needed to make a presentation. It goes to their executive board on the 11th for a preview, back to the RAC committee on the 28th for a final vote, with an April 8th GSI executive committee for the final vote. So they're looking to have this done roughly a week before the federal trip, which would make sense to have this in place by then. So I guess not necessarily looking for feedback today, just more awareness. If you have thoughts or ideas, it can be discussed at next week's meeting. But at this point, I wasn't planning on bringing anything forward unless somebody directs me to do so.
Okay, so any changes would need to happen next week at our meeting, so.
Yeah, we need you guys to vote so I could get it into them by the end of the day next Tuesday.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing that came to mind was just having Arian, if there was anything in the broadband section that we needed to be more explicit about that would help Spokane County. I don't have that information, but she probably would. And then the other area was just the healthcare and life science. If there was something in there around expanding our crisis stabilization center
I
or.
think the second to bottom bullet, I actually highlighted where it says prioritize investments in mental health, behavioral health, as well as health
Yeah,
and
I
services.
mean, you could put such as or something.
That was one I thought we
Yeah.
could even reference if the stabilization center
Right,
ends up on your
sobering
priority
center,
list.
yeah. Yeah.
That's one I thought we actually had a direct connection already.
Yeah, those are the two things that I noticed. I don't know if.
The broadband one's pretty light, I'm just 2 bullets, you
Yeah.
think?
I had the same
Probably come
comment.
up
I'm
with
thinking
a
there's
couple
something a little more
bullets.
specific that
I'll
needs
shoot
to
this
be-
over to Arian
Yeah,
then,
that's
if you
what I
guys
would
like, for
suggest.
feedback.
Yeah, no, that'd be great, because we have our Broadlink meeting tomorrow, so, so it'd be great.
If there's a very specific
Yeah.
change we'd like to see that would help free up funds,
One we'd love to see is some date changes, but I don't think that's realistic.
get monies out quicker. Okay,
Move
we
it.
put that, sounds like a great bullet.
Yes.
I mean, I think the problem is the feds think it's out, and
It's
the
just-
state is not,
Yeah, it's stuck in the agencies at this point.
which is frustrating, and I heard that back in DC as well.
So
that-
they're like, well, we sent it,
Yeah,
we've got it out.
yeah, and the counties are really frustrated with the states. So,
So I'll forward this to Arian, any other feedback? Okay, thank you.
Chris?
I have a miscellaneous. I just wanted to circle back with the board on the discussion last week regarding the STA alternate position. So just wanted to say I worked with Chris Anderson, whether he liked it or not, last week to get the city and the valley's current resolutions dealing with STA alternates, and I can send those out to everybody if folks would like to look at it. What I see in looking at those resolutions is that I think that the resolution that we currently have in place is consistent with what the Valley does. They passed a resolution on the 17th of January that appoints council members Patton and Higgins as STA alternates. Of course, Mayor Haley and Deputy Mayor Hattenberg are members of the board as well. And we have our resolution designating our alternate who's not currently a member of the board, and so that does seem to be consistent with what the Valley does. I just wanted to share that. What I also found is that the city of Spokane seems to do alternates a little bit differently than the Valley. They have a resolution that says any council member can serve as an alternate to any board or committee, but the city council president is the one who makes that decision. So just wanted to share that information with people. I can send those documents out. That's my update.
So Commissioner French, are you gonna go, or can I ask a question? So I guess I'm just trying to make sure, so this is the within the board that you're just doing, I mean, which is
For
why,
one committee, it's for board ops, because I'm non-voting.
right, so I
This is
guess,
just stating if Al is not there, only if he's not there, I would take his voting rights. And I think Chris talked with STA Legal.
I did.
okay, so we're,
So STA is more or less taking the position that each jurisdiction can kind of address alternates how they would like.
but it's not an alternate to STA, it's just an alternate within a committee already within STA. So I mean, I guess that's where my confusion is why we need to deal with this, that it should just be within STA.
And STA has no regulations or bylaws that address it, and because
Okay.
you
So
know,
they're just
they are-
wanting us to
yeah.
then confirm that,
There's, if I did confirm that they said, you know, if this, if the board takes this action, that would be fine, it's consistent, they have no qualms with it. Moving forward as is, they, you know, they're more or less leaving alternates up to the jurisdictions that are appointing the members, so.
Commissioner French.
So the Board Operations Committee is the one that's established by the STA Board. And the makeup of the Operations Committee is representation from the four major voting blocks, if you will, for STA. You have the City of Spokane, Spokane County, Spokane Valley, and the small cities. And so that's the makeup of the Operations Committee. The expectation is that two of those four will serve as committee chairs. One committee, Planning and Development. The other committee is Performance Monitoring and External Relations. Josh is chair of PEMR. And so he sits on board ops as a representative as a chair for that committee. The voting structure of that committee is limited to just 4 votes. Because if we go to 5, it constitutes a majority of the board and it then is considered a board meeting. So we're limited to just 4 votes. I am the chair. I am automatically the chair of the committee. The other 2 chairs are Pam Haley, Josh Kearns. The small city rep is Dan Dunn. He doesn't sit as a chair on any committee. He just represents small cities. And then Zach Sapone is the other committee member representing the city of Spokane. So to give the 4 jurisdictions a vote meant that Josh had to be a non-voting member of the committee so that we didn't exceed the 4 voting members and exceed the quorum requirement. In that event where I'm not present, and dear God, after this, I don't think that'll happen, but if that does, Josh, representing the county, would be my alternate. If he's not my alternate as a member of board ops, the county will not have a vote. And so board ops will then be a committee of 3 votes, not 4, and we will not have a vote. So that's why making this determination is critical. And it's only because there are 2 from the county. This has happened once before with the city of Spokane. And so this is not.
so is this just a resolution for this year, for this situation,
Yes.
because you're chair?
Yes, that's it. You nailed it. That's it. We are now firmly in the weeds on a committee
Yes, we
for
have it.
another board.
Okay.
Okay, I appreciate the information from Commissioner French, but I guess I'm gonna ask, we passed a resolution that designated me an alternate to the STA board to serve either if Commissioner Kearns could not attend or Commissioner French. So wouldn't that resolution that's already on the books already have an alternate in place
No,
for
But that's-
any STA board activity?
no, because the board appoints the membership on the board ops committee, not the alternates. And quite frankly, I'm not even sure why we have you designated as an alternate to the STA board, because the representatives from the county represent the unincorporated area of the PTBA. And on the unincorporated area, the PTBA, there are only three of us that have a significant role in that, and that's Commissioner Kearns, Commissioner Cooney, and myself and stuff. The part of the PTBA boundary that is in District 3 or District 2 is the majority of that is represented by the city of Spokane. So the proportionality requirement is for that unincorporated area within the PTBA boundary. And with regard to the PTBA boundary and votes in the last 2022 election, Ms. Waldriff only got 8.3% of the total votes cast by the county. And of that, less than 1% were from the unincorporated area. And so if we're looking for representation for the unincorporated area, she's the least of representative of the unincorporated area and stuff. So it makes no sense. And I'm not sure how because I don't, in my notes, don't have Ms. Waldriff appointed to the STA as an alternate. But when we voted on it, evidently we did. And so we live with it. But
Yeah, I mean, I was the alternate last
She
year,
was the alternate
never
last year as
attended.
well.
I don't expect to attend frequently, but I guess getting back to Mr. Anderson, we have established an alternate for the STA board.
So
So
in
this
my,
is-
so if I could, so in my time on STA, so in subcommittees, when someone is absent, I don't think I've ever seen an alternate attend a subcommittee. If the full board, someone is absent, that's when an alternate is there. So like on PEMR, last year, Pam Haley was chair, I was on it, Betsy Wilkerson and Zach Sapone. There were multiple times, so Pam Haley and I never missed a meeting last year. Zach Sapone and Betsy Wilkerson, there were meetings where one of them would be absent or sometimes both of them would be absent. They never sent a City of Spokane alternate to a subcommittee. If one of them was absent from the full board, the full board of STA, that's when alternates would attend to that. So I can't remember a time I've seen an alternate attend a subcommittee meeting, so.
Which, that's what, I mean, when I was an alternate, I think I've attended a meeting, I was never any subcommittees that I attended on STA, so I'm, and like the health district, we don't have alternates on,
Yeah.
that either, so.
I guess I'm surprised to hear this because I don't think it was brought up. This idea that we wouldn't have a vote was not something that we discussed last week. I'm surprised that our attorney.
Oh, no, he talked about
Yeah,
last
no,
week.
we made that very, very good. This is just about the voting rights for
On
the
the
county on the
operating
one
committee.
board ops.
Well, I'm hearing Chris say, STA is saying, you guys work out your alternates.
But they've also, if we don't do this, I've been told I don't automatically get Al's voting rights if he's not there.
Correct, but
Yeah.
STA also did not indicate that you were the only one who could replace Al if he's gone.
Right, okay.
So,
And
and they did reference the 2019, which is the last time that this came up. And they, they did say, and that is one of the reasons that STA is, not addressed this scenario in their bylaws or anything else, is because it has come up only once before. This is only the second time they've had this issue come up, and so it's a infrequent and not something that they want to specifically
When the city had two people.
address.
So I will say, just because I think at this point, I don't know if I'm the deciding vote here or not on this, but I mean, it's within STA, it just makes sense that, I mean, whoever the alternate is, if it was me, I wouldn't want to be on the ops committee making decisions when I haven't been part of the rest of it. So since you are the other board member, it does make sense to appoint you as the alternate on the ops committee. I guess that's where I'm at, because again, in the grand scheme of things, as whoever's the alternate wouldn't have the information to be making a decision versus the other commissioner who's sitting on STA. So it doesn't matter who it is. If it's you in the future and it's Al, I would still want to make sure it's within STA that voting right goes to. So
So a question I would have is, if that's the case, well, first of all, it seems, I just think it needs to be understood that none of the other cities have such a resolution in place now. They just have an alternate resolution that doesn't distinguish between full board
I think
and
it's
subcommittees.
only when that person is chair, when that entity is the chair, it sounds like is the issue that
We're the
this would
only
come up.
jurisdiction this impacts right now because every other jurisdiction only has one person on board ops. The county is the only jurisdiction that has two on board ops right now. Next year, that won't be the case because the chairmanship rotates to another jurisdiction. And it might be an issue for that jurisdiction, it might not. It all depends on who the committee chairs are. So this just happened to be that perfect storm. Al is chair of the full board, I'm chair of PEMR. Last year, it wouldn't have been an issue because PEMR chair was Pam Haley. And I think P&D chair was maybe, oh, you were, but chair was the city of Spokane?
Spokane.
Yeah, Spokane, and then there was the small cities rep, so there was no double up, essentially of representation from any jurisdiction, so.
Right. And I understand it's an unusual rotational situation. What I'm hearing from the attorney is STA is telling us we can send whoever we want. We've already selected an alternate by resolution, so there's nothing in resolution anywhere that I'm aware of preventing us from just sending our alternate to that committee if there was a vacancy.
To vote?
We haven't heard anything from STA saying,
Right, but
and if I could, Commissioner French said last week that the vacancy belongs to the county. And I think that's consistent with what STA told Chris, and we already have a resolution addressing a vacancy. So I haven't heard from STA a clear statement saying that if we sent Commissioner Waldrop to the board ops meeting in the event of an absence that she couldn't vote. If you heard that directly from, it sounds like they said you couldn't vote for Al, but they didn't say that our alternate couldn't vote for Al.
Would we want to send an alternate that hasn't attended a single STA board meeting in 5 years? 4 years? To be
I'm
voting on
comfortable
the
with
board
that.
ops?
I'm comfortable with that personally.
Oh, okay, understood.
Well, we
Okay, Amber, and then-
pick alternates for every board. I mean, I'm an alternate to GSI. I haven't been to a GSI meeting in a year. If I had to go and show up, I would have to go up and show up and get up to speed and vote. For any board, that's why we have alternates, so the county will be represented in a case of emergency, I guess.
Right. But, and Commissioner French, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna butt in here, and then get to you. But I think in this case, this is like within this whole committee structure. To me, I see it a little bit different because it's within the STA committee structure is causing this, not that someone's not gonna make the meeting. I mean, because there is already somebody who's on the board that will be able to be there, I guess. So I see it a little bit different than just a normal, we're having the alternate go, because it's like Josh would be the alternate in that case. You then would fill in as for Josh, potentially as the alternate on what he's now giving up, which is just the ex officio role on that committee. So the voting still stays within the people, the commissioners that are within the STA. Okay, Commissioner French.
The voting position as an alternate to the board at this point is Amber Waldrop. She is not, and never, and is not part of board ops. There are only 5 people on board ops. One is ex officio, and that is Commissioner Kearns. This measure just takes, in my absence, Commissioner Kearns is the voting member. We are laboring over trying to get to a different outcome that is just contrary to the history of the agency. And, if you want a legal opinion about this very specific issue, I can work to get that legal opinion, but it's not going to change the composition of the board ops. And Commissioner Waldron knows this. The composition of the board ops is voted on by the board of STA. And they've made that determination. And whether she's the alternate to the board, she is not an alternate to board ops. Because that's a position that's already been defined.
Really?
by
That's been
resolution.
defined.
It has been. The composition of board ops has already been determined by resolution of the STA board.
Commissioner Jordan?
I just am wondering if that's consistent with what you interpreted STA telling you.
So I guess I didn't get into these specific ins and outs. We didn't go this far down the rabbit hole in my conversation with STA's attorney. But my interpretation of what I have seen is that and in the conversation that we did have, and in specifically comparing the county's circumstance to the city's circumstance in 2019, and I believe that the city had their alternates set up effectively the same that they do now, where any council member could serve as an alternate for any of the other council members as designated by council president. And so STA's attorney effectively, my take was that they interpreted that as, that resolution of city council would have applied to the ops board in the 2019 scenario. So meaning that council president could have appointed the non-voting member to take the place of that voting member or somebody else pursuant to their resolution on alternates. That was my takeaway from our conversation, but again, we did not go into this level of detail in that conversation, so.
So is this resolution, I apologize, I have not read the full resolution. Is this just for this year?
I would have to double check on the timeline. It is just for the ops committee.
It's just for the ops committee and it's just for this year because this will be the only year I'll be chair.
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
it certainly would not apply if this situation, is not going to exist after this year, and that being the case, then
But, and
Yeah.
since we potentially can change people each year,
yes.
I would just wanna make sure that the resolution is just for this year and, I'm not kind of.
So my understanding, because you were the one who had the conversation with STA, is they did not tell you Commissioner Waldron cannot be an alternate. They said the county can decide the alternates however it wants. Is that a fair statement?
Well, so generally, yes, they certainly did not tell me that Commissioner Waldron could not be the alternate. They said that, I think STA's attorney was aware of the proposed resolution that we have, and said that was perfectly acceptable. Also said that the way that the city had their resolution for alternates was perfectly acceptable, so we kind of discussed what was contemplated, or what had been proposed at that time we had the conversation, and their attorney said, I did not see any issues with how we were potentially going to do it or pursuing it other ways, that we did not get into specifics on other ways of appointing alternates. So.
Any further discussion? Okay, this afternoon we'll have the chance to take it separately. Or not, so that one, let me know at 2:00, if you'd like it separately. Okay, are there any other miscellaneous items? Scott, you're good.
Just learned that there's a need for a buy leave item this afternoon. One of our platforms, SparkGov, which our building and planning team uses, The company has been acquired by another company. They're requiring an innovation agreement and assignment, which is contemplated under our agreement. They're needing it by the 29th of February. They're requiring it by the 29th of February. So they're asking for a board action on it. So that's something that we'll have to add for this afternoon because of the timing. Chris is aware.
Okay.
And then second thing, follow up to the conversation with Chandra. I had asked Heather, there's a number of funding sources coming in that the commissioners have heard about before, but we've talked about a lot and some of it's been months ago. So she's got a tracking sheet that shows every bucket of money that we've gotten from the state or other source, whether there's matching requirements, what it can be used for, when it ends, and how much has been spent and how much has been paid. So I'm gonna have her send it out to the commissioners, and I'll have her keep it updated so you can keep it visually for a dashboard for you. Because I know those numbers have been moving around a lot, it's not always right at the top of your tongue. That was all,
And is there an executive session
this afternoon,
this afternoon?
yes.
For it to because what time is it? I mean, would it be, we're not
We
queued up
had
to do
it,
it?
we had it queued up for this afternoon with availability.
Okay. Just, it's always harder with the mics.
Understand.
Because especially, I will say, last time being on Zoom, it was harder to hear the mics for some reason. I think Commissioner French and I could hear each other just fine, but the mics were like really bad.
Should we,
They're
we
horrible.
can always come back here
Yes,
to do the
exactly.
executive session if we want. We can all just walk back over here.
Yeah,
Then we don't have to do the mic thing,
okay.
I like that.
We'll just bring the stack of paper, we'll sign them in here
Yeah.
rather than on the dais. Just come over here.
Okay, Commissioner French, will that work for you? We'll just have like a 5-minute break in between.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I do have a hard stop at 3:30, so hopefully we'll be done by then.
Should we have a short, well, potentially short meeting this afternoon.
Okay, then we'll do that just to make sure that it's not a mic issue and all of that, so that'd be great. Okay, is there anything else? And how long is that executive session, just for time purposes?
Maybe in about an hour, I'm guessing.
Depends on what
Could
you
be.
guys have to
Could be a half
ask.
hour?
What did you do?
Wait.
God, what did you do?
We've talked about it before, so it just depends on how
Alright.
much detail
Okay.
additional we go to.
Okay, so just for timing purposes, the executive session will be approximately an hour, Commissioner French, and for all of us. So, okay, that's helpful to know as we plan the afternoon. So then, at this point, is there anything else to come before us? Okay, not seeing anything else, then we will adjourn for the morning, and we'll adjourn our 9 o'clock meeting and see everybody